Hi, this is Joe Shannon. I'm a lawyer, a husband, a father of 6 kids, and I also host a podcast called Opening Statement with Joe Shannon. Please consider listening to our podcast on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple, and any other folks that host podcasts. Just Google Joe Shannon and podcast, and you'll find it. I hope you enjoyed the show. We're here today with David Laborde of Laborde Earls Injury Lawyers. How are you today, David?
I'm good, Joe. How are you doing?
That is a loaded question. It is April 2nd, 2020, and so you and I and the whole country are in the middle of this pandemic. How are you guys holding up down there in Louisiana?
As I'm sure you've seen on the news, New Orleans in particular is a very hot spot. We've been fortunate. We're about 100 miles west of New Orleans in Lafayette, Louisiana, and it's really not that bad. The governor, rightfully so, did shut everything down, and for the most part, all businesses are closed. But we have a skeleton crew in the office, and everyone is working remotely. So far, we've been blessed that no one has really had any ill effects physically from this pandemic.
Yeah. So I know that you have roots somewhat in New Orleans. I know that you went to law school in Tulane, right?
I did. I sure did. I graduated in 1991. I have a son who lives in New Orleans and just graduated from Tulane this past year. So it's a city that's near and dear to my heart.
Yeah. One of the things that we learn from these type of things, I don't know if I ever told you, David, but back in 1980 on May 18th, the volcano blew up in my backyard, Mount St. Helens. I was about, 90 miles away from where it happened. And at 9 o'clock in the morning, it was a sunny day, about 8:30, but at 9 o'clock in the morning it was pitch black. And all I knew was there was ash everywhere, and it's snowing basically. It seemed like of ash, which was basically the top of Mount St. Helens, coming down on us for a couple days. And that is the same type of feeling I have now with everybody staying at home and not going outside. It's an eerie feeling, isn't it?
It really is. You had not told me that. And I vividly remember, I was in high school at the time, but I remember turning on the television that morning and seeing the news. It's like Armageddon. I didn't realize that you were there.
Yeah, it was. The only people that were actually, I think, killed by that were people that were actually living on the mountain or nearby with the slides and everything. But yeah, it's indelible. I remember that. But so tell me what's going on at the Laborde house. I know you have 5 children. Are people making their way home?
Yeah, I do have 5 children. Like I mentioned, one just graduated law school and he lives in New Orleans. He's hunkered down at home, working from home. I have another one who's a banker and lives in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. He likewise is working from home. And I have 2 that are in college and one still in high school. So the ones that are in college and high school have all made their way home, and they're all going kind of stir crazy, but they're all safe. So thankfully, everyone's okay.
Yeah, I've got 6 kids, and it seems like I think the only one that hasn't come home yet, she's living about an hour and a half north of us, and I think she's going to come home to be with us for a while over Easter. But yeah, I think families are finding out who they're related to pretty well, because we're all so cooped up, right?
My oldest daughter that came home from college decided that she wanted to raise chickens while she was off of school, so she went and bought 6 chicks, and so we've been raising chickens as a hobby for the last couple of weeks. It's been actually kind of fun.
That's great. So listen, before we get into these interviews, I like to let folks know where you came from, because this is such a great American story, the Laborde Earls Injury Lawyers firm. one of the top firms in the country, and the two fellas that are the name partners got just impressive stories about where they came from, and one of the things that I've always felt is that I'm drinking from a well that was been dug by my ancestors long ago, and I know that you share that same feeling.
I do. I was my father was a lawyer and later a judge, and so I've been very fortunate to have been around the legal field my whole life essentially. And in 1991, I graduated law school and clerked for a federal judge for a year. But when I came home, my dad was ready to retire from being an appellate court judge, and he and I formed what was then the Laborde law firm, and had just a wonderful career with my father, and sharing work and highs and lows, and coming to the office every day and visiting with him. My sister ultimately came to work with us, and we did that until 2014, when my dad was ready to retire again from being a lawyer at that time, and Digger and I, who's the Earls of Laborde Earls, Digger and I had begun working on a few projects a few years before that, and really got along well, and decided to make a go of a partnership, and it's been wonderful.
Yeah, so Laborde Earls Injury Lawyers has been around for about 6 years, but you've been practicing law for almost 30 years, huh?
Yeah, when I do the math, it kind of scares me, because I don't think of myself as being that old, but when I look in the mirror, I realize that I am. So I've been a lawyer since 1991, and I've been practicing since 1992. So it has been nearly 30 years.
Wow. So tell me where you're born and about your upbringing.
Sure. I was born in central Louisiana, a small town called Alexandria, Louisiana, and grew up in a really small town, a farming town, Marksville. And again, by virtue of some of the work my dad was doing, I was really lucky. My entire family moved to Europe and lived in Spain for 3 years in the mid-'70s, and came back to Marksville around 1978, and stayed there through high school, went to Louisiana State University in Baton Rouge, LSU. I'm a Tiger. And then went to law school at Tulane. And ever since then, like I said earlier, I had met a federal judge while I was in college on a hunting trip, and he would come down to Louisiana once a year and hunt, and we became good buddies. He offered me a clerkship in Puerto Rico. He was a court of appeals judge in Puerto Rico. And so when I finished law school, I went and spent a year in Puerto Rico and clerked in Boston, as odd as that might seem. We would travel to Boston once a month for court, but most of the work, or should I say most of the play, was done in Puerto Rico. And after I finished that clerkship, I was married and moved to Lafayette, Louisiana with my wife, Catherine. She goes by Khaki. And we've been here ever since.
No, that's great. So, the one of the interesting parts when I was doing my research for this interview is that you're fluent in Spanish.
I am. It's by virtue of having lived in Spain. I never lost it. I made a point of always speaking Spanish whenever I could. And then when I went to Puerto Rico for a year, I certainly refreshed my Spanish, changed my accent somewhat, but I've always maintained my ability to speak and read Spanish. It's been very, very good to me, both in school and more so in my profession.
Yeah. So do you represent some Spanish-speaking clients?
Joe, more and more so. In Texas, which is right next door, has always had a large Hispanic community. And I would say in the last 5 to 6 years, we've seen an influx of a lot of Spanish clientele coming into our area. So the short answer is yes, but it's becoming more and more prevalent every day. In fact, just this morning, we interviewed a candidate, a new lawyer who may come to work for us. And one of the qualifications we were looking for is a Spanish speaker. This young lady speaks Spanish, and that we have a need for it. My sister works with us also. She speaks Spanish, and I speak Spanish. But because of the influx of the Spanish-speaking community in Lafayette and in Alexandria, we have a need to hire another lawyer that speaks Spanish, and that's what we're doing.
Well, you know what, I think that you can speak to somebody's heart when you speak their language, and that's got to be a real leg up for you guys when you can speak their language. But listen, I want to switch gears a little bit. What an interesting life living in Spain and living in Puerto Rico, and you got such a great family too. You've got 5 kids, and just a really blessed existence. And where are you physically located most of the time, David?
I physically live in Lafayette, Louisiana, and I've been here since 1992, and love the community. It's a wonderful place to raise a family.
And then do you guys have offices in other areas other than there?
We do. We have an office in both in Marksville, the town that I grew up in, and Alexandria, which is 30 or 40 miles just north of Marksville. So we're in 2 markets, if you will, with 3 offices.
One of the things that I like to talk to folks about when I interview them is to talk to them about some defining moments that they've had in their career and personally. And you learn a lot about somebody when they talk about these things. I know that when people are in the market to hire a lawyer, a lot of times they look at your guys' background as far as your competency. And when I was doing this research for this interview, I was looking at your verdicts and settlements, and I was pretty much blown away by you guys are such self-effacing, humble fellas, and you're sitting here with all these huge verdicts and settlements, and the track record speaks for itself. But I think people want to know, something about you personally too. So I know you've had a ton of personal defining moments, but could you share one or two with us?
Sure. You mentioned those verdicts and settlements, and we've been blessed. We've had some big verdicts and some big settlements. Some of the most, you talk about defining moments, I'll never forget. After I finished my clerkship, I came and opened my own office. As silly as that seemed, I just figured I had nothing to lose, so I'd go ahead and open my own office. And I was lucky enough to get my first client through a relative who referred a friend of mine, a friend of theirs. And I worked my tail off to get my first settlement, which I distinctly remember was $3,000. And to this day, that stands out as one of my most proud moments, because this person, first of all, needed some help. I was able to help them, and it just gave me a tremendous amount of confidence that I could do this and never look back. So those little, the big verdicts and the big settlements came over time, but it's those smaller ones, or the ones that you did pro bono and that we still do pro bono every day, helping people that are really in need, that are really the most rewarding. I think that's the heart of a plaintiff's lawyer, and I know you're the same way. I know how you prepare for your cases. You take every case and prepare it for trial, not for a settlement. But to be able to help someone who's either disadvantaged or being taken advantage of and not being helped is what we strive to do. And personally, it's the most rewarding thing that I ever do.
That you know what, I was thinking about that the other day. When I opened up my law firm, I was a defense attorney for about 8 years, representing big companies and insurance companies. And I sat down with my wife. We had just had our second child, Claire. Emma was not yet 2, and we decided to open up our law firm. And I remember talking to my wife, and we had no clients, and I said, well, should we do this? And she basically looked at me and said, let's do it, and took the leap of faith. Do you remember having that kind of discussion or talk, or with yourself or anybody else who's around?
No, I had the discussion with that same discussion with my wife and with myself. But my case was a little different. I didn't have a job. My clerkship was ending. I had an opportunity to stay for another year, but I chose not to. And I had a classmate from law school that had just opened his own office, and he offered to let me share some space for free for 6 months if I wanted to. And so I said, heck, what do I have to lose? Let's do it. And we did it, and it's the best decision I ever made.
Wow. When I look at the name a professional, I look at people that not only do great work in their own vocation. You guys as a law firm represent people that have been injured. I'm looking at this judgment that you guys got in a wrongful death case for a mother, and just a huge verdict. This lady must have been something else. But the thing that I look at a lot is what they give back to the community. And I'm looking at I basically Googled your name, and I looked for news, and all the news was about all the great things you do for the community as far as music festivals and stuff for kids to make sure that they have an advantage. And what got into your mind about that?
I think it's just something that's in line with what I mentioned to you about being a plaintiff's lawyer, that you want to help people. I've been blessed beyond anything I could have ever imagined insofar as having a family and a career and the ability to do things that I've wanted to do. I've been healthy. And so it's important to me personally, and Digger as well, which is why I think, that we get along so well, that we do good things for the people around us. And so those things that you mentioned are just small tokens of appreciation and our attempt to give back to this community that has been so good to us and blessed us so much. During this pandemic, my wife came up with the idea of, why don't we select a local hospital or emergency room and select a local restaurant that's closed down because of everything being shut down, and sponsor a meal for one shift at the emergency room each day. And so we've been doing that locally, and it's just the right thing to do. So we're able to give the local restaurants some business. We're able to feed these medical providers that are tending to people that are walking in off of the streets and risking their own lives. And it's the least we can do to show some appreciation to everyone.
That is the mark of a professional, that that you're not getting anything out of it. You're basically knowing people are in need, and you have the resources, and doing this type of thing that is absolutely tremendous. And you're inspiring everybody. So heck, man, what am I doing? I got to get going on this thing, Dave. I got to keep up with Laborde Earl's injury lawyers, because they're in the lead. You're not asking anybody what to do. You're doing it. I like it. So, hey, listen, I wanted to switch gears here a little bit. And I always, I've always find it fascinating. Some jobs that you had, when you were in grade school or high school or college that helped you to identify with the people you represent. One of the best jobs I ever had was when I was in grade school going into high school, and for a couple of years I had a paper route, and so I used to get papers delivered to my house, about 150 of them, and I'd have to basically wrap them up and put a rubber band around them and put them in my paper bag on both sides and ride my bike, and I deliver 150 papers at 5:30 in the morning, and then every month I had to go door to door to go collect the money that for the paper. And I'll tell you, I learned some life lessons in that I still use today. How about you? You got any jobs like that you remember?
Oh, of course. I mean, and I always wish that I could have had a paper route, by the way. If I lived in rural Louisiana, my route would have been 40 or 50 miles long. So it wasn't available to me. But I've done everything from work as a deli, or work in the fruit section in a supermarket when I was in high school, to raising cattle and pigs for my dad. And I've been a lifeguard in college. But the best job I think that I've ever had that believe it or not, I still long to do sometime is I worked as a bartender in a restaurant, and I just had the best time doing that, talking to people and visiting with them. And you become friends with the regulars that come in once a week at the same time and sit at the same bar stool and order the same food. And it's just, I always found that job to be very entertaining and never boring. And so that was probably one of the best jobs that I've ever had.
So your dad was a judge, but he also had a farm?
He was, like I said, we lived in rural Louisiana. Everyone had cattle, everyone had pigs and horses or whatever the case may be. And my job was to feed the cattle every day. And I hated it. I loathed it. But believe it or not, I'm in the process of buying some cattle because I miss it. So it's funny how those things work.
So you live on a farm yourself?
No, but I have some rural property not too far away, and I'm going to put a few head of cattle on it just to go out and fool around with them for no other purpose.
And they'll join the chickens you guys just bought, right?
The goal is to move the chicken coop to the farm. That's right.
I like it.
Once they're big enough.
I like it. So one of the things when I'm trying cases and trying to explain my case to the jury is that, a lot of folks, when they have their jobs, we try and collect what they lost in their job, but a lot of what they lose is their ability to do what they really love, which is their hobbies or interests or sports. How about you? You got any hobbies or interests or sports that you still doing?
Yeah, I'm an avid outdoorsman. I love hunting. I love fishing. I love just being outside. Like I mentioned, I have this rural property. And so any opportunity that I have to be outside, whether it's riding a tractor, riding a boat, shooting a gun, that's what I'm going to be doing. And it's just, I love the outdoors. I love manual labor, and I like being outside. So I'm doing all of those things often.
That's great. So tell me about some of your favorite, either hunting or fishing or stories like that would tell us something about, what makes you tick.
So, first of all, I'm not a very good fisherman or hunter, but I like doing both. So that said, I probably spend 4 to 5 months out of the year planning for the opening of duck season. It's just something, everything from how I'm going to camouflage or brush my blind to what gun I'm going to have. And, we have these really nice blinds that we cook in. What are we going to cook for breakfast in the duck blind, and who am I going to invite? So those moments of preparation, and then the time spent watching the sunrise and watching the wildlife. It's really not about shooting anything or the kill. It's really about the preparation and the moment of being there. And I find it to be terribly relaxing, and it's something I look forward to right now. In fact, I have goosebumps talking about it. Someone sent me a text yesterday for April Fool's Day telling me that the hunting season this upcoming year is canceled because of coronavirus. And I was so distraught until I realized it was April Fool's. But
so when does hunting season start?
It opens as early as September. The duck season opens in late or mid to late November, however.
And then
so some of the seasons, dove season and some other things open earlier during the year.
And then I'm up in Chicago, so I'm fascinated by this. I have a dog, Archie, who's he's what they call a golden doodle. So he's a half golden retriever, which I'm really fascinated with. I like the golden retriever part. And then he's part poodle, which I'm like, I don't really, not too proud about owning a poodle. But anyway, I take him for long jogs. I call them not runs, but we try and run for about an hour. And this dog in my mind is a hunting dog or a retriever type of dog. When you do your hunting, do you bring along some dogs with you?
I do. Well, first of all, I've seen pictures of Archie, and he looks like like a good friend for sure. But
He is.
I do. I have a large Labrador Retriever, and he's with me everywhere I go during the hunting season. So he's my sidekick. He does all the work. I have all the fun.
What's his name?
His name is Caesar.
Oh.
He's about 100-pound Labrador Retriever. He's just a really big lab, but a gentle giant.
How long have you had him?
I think Caesar just made his 7th birthday, and I've had him since he was a pup. So he's around 7, close to 8.
So I understand you get kind of attached to these dogs.
Oh, he's the first person I see when I leave the house in the morning, the first person I see when I come home in the afternoon, and you know how dogs are. They're loyal to a fault. And it's odd. He's outside most of the time, but I'll be walking in the house and I'll look out the window and I can see him just following me around the yard as I walk through the house. But he's my buddy. How
did your wife like the whole hunting side of David Laborde?
She likes it. It's we have a camp that we go to, and we share this camp with my sister and brother-in-law, and it's very common that we all go there for the weekend, and sometimes we all go hunting together. Sometimes some of them stay back and fiddle around, but it's always a fun weekend. So it's more of an event than just a hunt. So it's a weekend-long event, a lot of visiting, a lot of good food, and a lot of good stories.
And your kids follow in your footsteps with the hunting?
All of them. My boys my 3 sons are avid hunters and fishermen. My daughters, they'll typically come once or twice a year, more for just to spend some time with their dad than to hunt. They're not big hunters, but they like going out there and visiting.
No, that's great. And then, that's one thing that I'm hoping for is that, that my one daughter has taken up tennis, and I'm just glad that I can play a sport with her hopefully for the rest of our life. And then I like to golf a little bit, so it's nice to have that. But I'm jealous of you having that rural lifestyle where you can, walk the woods with your kids, and you really get to know them a little bit better when you're on that type of environment. Isn't that right?
It really is. A friend that you and I have in common had told me once that he went away and spent about a week alone in the woods just to reflect and to calm down. I forget the exact words that he used. And so I promised myself that I would try that one day, and I haven't had a week, but I did set aside about 3 days this past fall and just went and put everything aside and just camped out. And it was a rebirth. I mean, it really was refreshing to go out there and just let your mind settle down and spend some time alone just to reflect on everything. So I would encourage it.
I was talking with your partner, and he told me that when he was growing up on the farm, that he started driving a truck when he was 9 years old. Now, David, you didn't start driving before you were 16, did you?
Oh, I did, but not 9.
How old were you?
I was probably 12 or 13. I was definitely driving to town to go grocery shopping by the time I was 13.
Is that right?
Absolutely.
Well, now, did you have to learn how to use a shift?
I did. Had the first truck I drove was I don't know what you call it, a collar shift.
3 on a tree?
Difficult. Yeah. And then later a stick shift on the floor, but drove a standard truck until I was probably 17, 18 years old.
Now, I'll tell you, after these interviews with you guys down in Louisiana, I am really threatening to send my 11-year-old son down there.
Oh, please do. Come with him.
And just for a summer or winter, it's maybe too hot in the summertime, but maybe, just during a duck season, and have him come back and just be a guy he's 12 years old. He's driving. He's picking up groceries for us, and he's a marksman and he's a fisherman and all sorts of things. That'd be great.
Would love to have him. And I know he's a heck of a basketball player too, right?
Yeah, he can fill it up. But I'll tell you, I think he could use a little bit of that waking up at 5 in the morning, going hunting and learning how to do the manual labor, which you say you like. That I think he's allergic to the manual labor.
Would love to have him.
Well, I'll tell you, I always find it, when I talk to guys like you, I think back to, I'm reading a book right now on George Washington, and it's a fascinating book by this guy named Ron Chernow. It talks about his whole life, the good parts and the bad parts and all that. And, the young people grew up a lot faster back then because they were required to. There really wasn't, television. There wasn't, they had to run their farms. They had to run their, and if they didn't work, they didn't eat. And I'll tell you, when I hear about rural America and how unbelievably, great a lifestyle you guys have, I think you guys got a recipe for how people should live. Is just, it's the American dream you're living.
Yeah, I like I said before, I've been very blessed. I have no regrets about the life, my upbringing. It was rural America, and I didn't have access to a lot of the luxuries that you might have in the city. But I've been able to enjoy those in my adulthood. But I still long to go back to those rural experiences. Those what I find are the ones that I find the most fun.
So, one of the things I think is interesting is what people read. And are there any favorite books that you've read lately, or different things you've experienced that you want to share with us?
The books I tend to read for the last 5+ years, for better or worse, tend to be more related to my work. And some of them are self-help books, like some of the Cy Wakeman books that you're familiar with, and how to run a business, those types of things. It's really been a while since I've had the time to sit back and read fictions or things like that, which I once enjoyed. But when I did those things in my previous life, I guess I tended to read more of the John Grisham type books, which I've always enjoyed.
Oh, those are great, aren't they?
They are. But the stuff I'm reading now is more related to, how to improve my work environment, how to improve my personal life, and how to improve my relationship with people around me.
I'm a lot in that boat. You and I are always trying to figure out how to run a better law firm so we can serve our clients. And I know that you guys have a number of lawyers that work for you, don't you?
We do. I think the last count I had was about 14 lawyers that are working in our law firm currently.
Wow. And then you're looking for more. I know that because you just interviewed that gal this morning. But yeah, you know what? I tell you, the effect that you guys have had on your community in providing a great environment for your lawyers, and how many support staff do you have?
I think total, counting the lawyers, we're right at 52 people.
Wow.
So it's a lot. When I look, similar to my age, when I look at how old I am or how big my staff is, I'm somewhat surprised. You're in it every day and don't really realize what's going on around you.
Well, you've come a long way from opening up that one-man law firm a long time ago, huh, David?
I did, yes.
I that to me is the genius of America, is that there's still that belief that a fella can open up a business, and if he works hard enough and has some good ideas and treats people the right way and treats his community the right way, that he or she can grow a business and make a big difference in their community. And I applaud you, I applaud Digger, and I applaud all those great people that work for you. And thank you so much for sitting down with us, David. And I tell you, it's always a pleasure to talk to you. I feel like I've been transported to walking through some varied landscape, both plains and fields and swampland and all that type of stuff. And God, I wish I was down there with you hanging out.
Well, Joe, I'd love to have you come and visit, and by all means, whenever you're ready, you let us know. We'll greet you with open arms. And thank you for inviting me to do this. This was really fun.
All right, take care, David. Thank you for listening to the opening statement with Joe Shannon. You can find us on the internet at shannonlawgroup.com or telephone our office at 312-578-9501. Have a terrific day.